Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Thank you for the nice weather, which makes people to look so smart. And I think I can even go to bed with a necktie. But in Malawi, you cannot walk the whole day with a necktie. It's too hot. But nice weather it is. Yeah, thank you so much. This morning we are going to talk a partnership with Staker Skills and the Staker, which brings in the new approach to young voices so that have to be heard and together to create the change to the world. Before I say more, let me first introduce my colleague here, Emma Wood, which in partner we do this project together. So I think she'll have a time when I will let her to say something on the same program of which we are implementing. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Godknows Maseko, born from Malawi, raised up with the poor single mother. Indeed, to be cared by a single mother, which is also from the poor country, it's not easy. We went through big challenges, which at the end found that it was difficult for her to be able to pay me school fees, whereby I opted to go into the street because I was lonely at home. All my friends were going to school, and I had to be at home without going to school. So whenever I see my friends coming back from school, I was really feeling some inferior. Then I said, no, I think this is not on. Let me just go out of home. And then I went into the street. So I went into to stay in the street as a street child for some years. But later on I realized that, is this a life that I have to be? Where is my mother? By then I had my sister. Where is my sister? Then I said, no, let me go back. And I have to go back to school. Even though I know that it would have to be a challenge, considering that my mother, I don't think she would have to be able to raise the funds. But I went back home, and then I met my mother. My mother was really happy to see me back. And I said, Mom, I want to go back to school. She said, yes, my son, with a confidence, even though I know that she's not sure what she's talking about because she cannot be able to pay me school fees. But I said yes, because I prepared myself to go back and go to school. Then I said, okay, Mom, what can we do so that we have to be able to raise funds so that I can go to school? She said, yes, let's do something. Then we ventured into a small business whereby we used to sell firewood and also have to go into different homes and do some piece work and generate income. So that other money we have to use for food and save a little bit for me to pay school fees. Yes, I went back to school. I did well until when I finished my secondary school level. But immediately as I finished, I had an opportunity to get employed at a certain clothing manufacturing company, whereby I worked there as a tailor. But still, my memory was putting me back in the street as the life in the street wasn't so easy. It was tough, with a lot of abuses, bullying, sleeping under the bridges. And during the winter, as I see it here, in Malawi winter, we talk about maybe 20 degrees and 10, 15 degrees. And they say, it's too cold. But here, it's the way how it is. So even though I was working at that clothing manufacturing company, I was still earning a little, which we couldn't have to afford to look after my mother and myself. Whereby at a certain point, I had an opportunity to be offered a job in South Africa. My colleague called me so that I have to go there. With the promise that I got there, I had no option than to go. So I told my mother, and by then I was also already married, my lovely wife, Helen. So I told you, Helen, I'm going to South Africa. She said, yes. She was excited. She was excited. So I went to South Africa, whereby I found myself in the hands of human traffickers who really badly abused me with the other 3 girls who was also badly abused. They used us as drug carriers. So while we were doing that, I had a plan to rescue the girls and myself. But I didn't succeed to rescue the girls. And then the boy of 13 years old was the one who rescued me from those people, and I went back home. I was really sick. I had fractures, I had wounds. So during the time when I was sick, it's time also I used to reflect. What is all this about? Is this the end of my life? The answer was no. So what next? What can I do? Then I said, let me do something. I have to do something to also save a life of somebody who can be only high risk to go through the same change that I went through. So it's when me and my wife, we sat down and set up a home, as you have seen here, a safe home whereby we have to rescue some of the children who are going through the difficulties, who are not able to go to school. Even though I struggle to go to school, but I don't like to see a child not going to school. I have to make sure that any child who is going past, who is passing by me, you have to go to school, and have to provide something. More especially a parental love. Whenever we see, people see a child is walking in the street, they think that maybe that child is scrambling in the dustbin and is looking for food. No, that child is not looking for food. That child is looking something beyond that, which is parental love. And I said, yes. Can't I provide that parental love? And my wife said, let's do that. So we set up that center. Then we started taking in children. So far, we are proud to say that we have at least helped about 100 children. And now we are living together with 70 children in our house as parents. So they call me daddy. They call my wife mom. It's not an orphanage, no. It's a family whereby those kids, they get love, which they have been missing on. They completely get lost that we don't think there's a parental love. But once they come to us, we make sure that we have to provide that parental love. But still, to look after 70 children, it's not easy. We have to provide food. We have to provide school fees. We have to provide clothing. And then what we did, we set up small income generating activities whereby we earn something of which it covers only 40% of whatever we supposed to use for that. Of course, we are lucky also that me and my wife went through the training, early childhood development, and also psychosocial counseling, basic skills, whereby it helps us to counsel, to deal with these children, considering that most of the children, whenever they're coming to us, they are psychologically affected. They are being abused. Some of them, they are even being abused sexually. So we need to deal with that so that we have to normalize them. They have to feel that, they have to know that I'm a human being. I can do, it's not the end, I can do it. So we bring in that confidence so that they can be able to go back to school. We also have received volunteers to come and help us with some other things. It's when now we discover some other problems, whereby we feel that me and Emma, we sat down and come up with this program, whereby I want Emma to shed more light of this program about what we have to bring in the new approach. Emma.
Okay. I'm usually voiceless, that's good, because usually it would be the Malawian who we don't hear from. But the theme of this is about tribes, and I'm really only here to talk about our Scottish tribe and our contribution to this issue. So as Godknows said, voluntourism can be for a grassroots charity like Steka. Voluntourism is a really important way of bringing in money, and this is a very positive experience from something that we're going to share with you now. But as Godknows also said, there can be real problems in the way that volunteers travel to countries like Malawi in the global south. And my view as an academic is to look critically at that, and that's how our partnership has worked. In that I'm able to look at our Scottish tribe and understand how these trips are framed in Scotland and why they might be in a problematic way. So we're governed, we're embedded in these social norms that tell us that we need to go and save helpless people like Godknows. So clearly you've heard that Godknows isn't helpless. Clearly you can see that Malawians are quite capable of bringing about their own change. They don't need young people from Scotland to go out and do the jobs that Malawians could actually be paid to do. And that's the unfortunate thing about the only model that we are offered, is often that they will come out, build wells, dig walls, paint, and we've both seen this happen at Stecker. And the intentions are good, but unfortunately, they come in and they focus on the DIY, they might take selfies, but they're not interacting with young people like Gift and Abigail, who are in the audience here. The young people at Stecker are as empowered as Godknows is. They are as interesting as Godknows is. They have as much to teach us about resilience and community and family values as Godknows does. But if our young people are going to Scotland and only building walls and not learning that, my concern here is also, what is that doing to our Scottish tribe? We want global citizens who can change the world, not people who will reinforce this very old-fashioned, aid-framed way of doing internationalism, which governments wouldn't fund. You know, governments don't think like that anymore. We think about human rights and enabling and empower people. So that way of doing things can just reinforce the inequality that already exists. And that clearly is a problem. It normalises this story that we are told in the global north, that there is an undeveloped part of the world and we're developed and we need to show them how to develop like us. Well, that's a narrative, and it ignores a lot of the bigger political and historical contexts around colonialism, for example, that we should actually be engaging with and thinking about. So I would love our global north young people, the Scots that go out there, not just to start telling Godknows what to do and how to do things, but actually to learn from Malawi. For example, shouldn't we be de-developing? Shouldn't we be making our own toys, this is one from Stecker, and consuming less? Shouldn't we, at a time when we're seeing the highest rates we've ever seen of teenage anxiety, could we be learning from Stecker about community, family values? And one thing we should definitely be learning about is the impact of climate change and that we are all responsible for it. They can learn all that on their trips to Malawi if they are set up in the right way. Another problem with these types of trips is that people can see it like a consumer exercise. I've done Malawi, I'm back home, I'm off with the rest of my life. Whereas really we should be trying to build solidarity. You know, when I think back to my days as a 17-year-old, I was inspired by Nelson Mandela. I didn't think I needed to go to South Africa and tell Nelson Mandela how to smash apartheid. But I did not make much of a contribution, but we did stand and stop people buying South African fruit in the supermarkets because Nelson Mandela had told us that's what we needed to do. And wouldn't it be wonderful if our young people in Scotland were coming back inspired, using their skills, not their DIY skills, but their skills on social media to tell more powerful stories, to bring about more powerful change, not stories about themselves, but amplifying the voices that you've just heard. But that's very difficult. At QMU, we've done a big piece of research around teenage dialogue, and we have recognised that what the young people in Malawi needed to do was create a brave space. It's difficult for teenagers to talk together, especially when they're very different. So we were very, very lucky in that the Scottish Government recognised our partnership and invested a small grant in it. So we were able to take our model of teenage dialogue to Malawi and work together with all the young people at Stecker so they could make it their own. And they used it so that young people from Scotland now go and pay to participate in dialogue groups. And you can see here Sandra explaining all sorts of issues around things like gender inequality, around the impact of climate change, really big, important things, but also about community, the positive and the negative aspects of her life that they can all learn from. And we've seen a big impact on the young Scots. They say they've been transformed overnight. Their views have changed, and they've learned from the resilience of the young people in Malawi how they can come home and bring about change in their own communities. I'll hold it for you because we're running out of time.
Yeah, so finally you have seen that our young youths have benefited a lot, and that is also going to help us to sustain and create a way how our young people, they are going to be trained in different skills, so that at the end they have to be able to depend on themselves and contribute towards the development of the country as well as the global. And remember, the voices have also been heard, and we have created that everything have to be, whenever they say they want something, they have to be able to say. Whenever they don't want anything, they have to be able to say. And more especially those things that somebody have just come and take a selfie, those are things that we have to look into. Thank you so much.